Hey, welcome back. Thank you, everybody. I think there's a couple of new people on that weren't on this morning. So welcome. Welcome to the new people. To people who are new on this and perhaps don't know, this is Jenny Elleray and I'm Dave Elleray. Getting used to saying that. We got married last year. Yeah. So no, welcome and thank you so much. Quick thing about this, we're doing it as a via donation thing for people who wish to contribute to freedom thinking. Donations are very much appreciated. We do it via donation so people can pay what they think is worth, what they want to pay. So we make it accessible to everybody. And those that can't afford to pay, we are putting this, we ask that people, if you can't afford to pay, please, could you consider doing an act of kindness? Something that is going to help somebody else. And we ask people to use their imagination, to really think about this, to really go above and beyond and really do something beautiful for another person who perhaps is not expecting it and perhaps just needs that cheer me up so that we can help to create a better world. So yeah, it's via donation, but if you can't afford to pay, please do a pay it forward thing. So this afternoon for this session, Jenny and I are very proud of ourselves. We're normally crap at timekeeping. We're on questions, observations, and reflections. So this is an interactive part. If people have got any questions, if people have got any observations, or they've been reflecting on something that's occurring to them, we'd love to hear it. And then we're going on till 3:45, 3:45. Then we've got a break till 4 o'clock. And then we've got, from 4 o'clock onwards, we've got Dr. Dicken Bettinger from America. Okay. So I'm just going to, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to say there's people have sometimes messaged and worried about the donation, and they'd say it's not how we value it, it's just what we can afford. And we don't want people to spend more than they can afford. And the whole reason we've set it up like this, and I think we started them in lockdown because we could see that there was a real need for this. And then also there often isn't, I know that there's people on waiting lists to speak to someone for 7 or 8 months at the moment through the NHS. So we want these to be accessible. So I know that some people have messaged and said they're embarrassed because their donation wasn't enough, or they're embarrassed because they were going to do an act of kindness and that didn't feel like enough. It is enough. Otherwise we wouldn't do it. And we enjoy these 3 days. So yeah, there's nothing like, we just appreciate anything. And if it is an act of kindness to someone else, and that's brilliant because you've paid it forward to someone else who might need it. So, and
we'd love to hear what they are, because somebody last year told us what they'd done and it was just so beautiful. It was like, to hear that was what was happened was ace. So yeah, if that happens, please let us know. Right, we're going to hand this over to you lot now. I think the best way that we do this is everybody familiar with the how to put your hand up thing on the Zoom? If you're not, neither am I. So let's figure this out. How do we do it?
If you're not, you can just put your hand up.
How do you do it?
I don't know.
No, nobody knows. Can somebody tell us how to do it? Kelly, you've done it before. I've seen you do it.
Oops. You just go into the reactions button. You see you've got mute.
All right.
And you've got stop video, participants, chat, blah, blah, blah. Then you go to the one with the reactions. It's like a little emoji face with a plus. And then you get a little list of emojis, and then underneath it says raise your hand.
It does. All right. So yeah, bottom line, bottom of the screen, there's a reactions thing. Click on that, and underneath all the emojis, there's a raise your hand. Eddie's first in there.
Oh, why not? Someone's got to be first. Thanks both for doing this. We spoke before about education, but like what it is, I think, is they don't want people to they don't like individuality. They want people to be kind of part of the herd rather than an individual. So it's rather than encouraging individuality, they stifle it, in my experience. That's my personal experience firstly. And then a little insight, I said Mark and Colette put me on to you because they come down to Birmingham. I'm in Birmingham in the West Midlands. Hello. Don't know where anyone else is, but there we are. And they come down to join us at Mike Behan's Just a Thought group and talk occasionally. And I've been trying to observe my thoughts and adjust them. And something you said, Dave, that was brought back a memory. I was on a, I think it was either a Thursday. I go to the same meeting. I'm in recovery, so I go to an A meeting. So I go to the same meeting on a same venue, not same meeting, the same venue on a Thursday evening, on a Saturday evening, and get the bus down. And the road is like on the right from where the bus runs along the road, if you know what I mean. It's on a side turning. And the bus stop's just a tiny bit further down, but there's often traffic along there. And the traffic was backed up and the bus stopped, and it was at the end of the road I wanted to go down. So I kind of, I saw what I was doing or how I could have behaved, and I behaved in the right way, but I saw how I could have behaved in the wrong way, if that makes sense. Because I said to the driver, "Oh, can you let me off here?" And it's obviously his discretion. And he said no. And I could see, I played kind of the tape forward in my head, if you know what I mean. Like, I know what I'd have done before. I'd have said, well, like, kind of called him a few choice words, you know, like, you know, the swearing and whatnot, and pushed the button and just got off the bus. But I didn't. I just thought, well, he's just doing his job. I kind of stood back from it and observed it, and just went to the bus stop and got off normally. Whereas it's like observing those, how I react differently, but just watching the thoughts, because I'm the observer of the thoughts, and the thoughts are not real. I'm learning that more and more. And it's difficult to be, I think we're, I suppose, is it programmed is the right way? Because a lot of it, for me anyhow, is learnt behaviours, but it's learnt behaviours from peers and things growing up. You know, I identify with both of you. I have a eating disorder as well, so I kind of can identify with that from growing up, and addiction. And it was a lot of like, you're no good, you're useless, blah, blah, blah. And I believed what was being told to me. But it wasn't so much what it was being told to me, it was how I received it. It was like there was a different, I didn't always get the same message received that was sent. It was like there was a breakdown somehow. And I was always oversensitive and too sensitive to things, I suppose would be the way of putting it. Yeah, so yeah, now I'm just trying to be different, you know. It's trying to be positive. I mean, I've got a friend, I'm from West London originally, and there was a guy I knew there, and he was called Happy Dennis because he was just always happy. But everyone demeaned him because he was always happy. Do you know what I mean? They always like kind of made out it was a bit of a odd because he was always happy. Like he'd say, I mean, maybe it seems a bit extreme, but he'd say, he would never say go down the road. He said we go up the road. We don't go down anywhere. We go up the road, and like turn everything to a positive rather than a negative. And people were dismissive and probably cruel to him, and I probably was myself at times at the time because of following peer pressure. Whereas I can see some of the value in it now because of how your perception is. You know what I mean? It's kind of you know, I've been doing a thing the last 80 something days. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Miracle Mornings. I've been doing a thing called Miracle Mornings. So it's a book, and it's you get up an hour earlier in the morning, even if you're not a morning person. You make yourself a morning person, and you do Miracle Morning Savers, which is S is space, so you have time for yourself. So if you're in a busy environment, you've got kids or, you know, whatever's going on, you have some time to yourself. The A is for affirmation, which I know they mean nothing unless they've got kind of belief behind them, but that I learned that from Mark. So the A is for affirmations. So I do the affirmations with my hand on my heart on mirror work. The V is for visualization. The E is for exercise. So do a bit of exercise every day. The R is for reading, and it's read something that's stimulating to the mind. Don't just read the paper or rubbish. Read something that's kind of feeding your soul and your mind. And the S is for scribing, so it's like keeping a journal. So I've been doing this for the last 84 days, I think it is now. But I found that just through that and changing my thought, even when I've had things that in the past would have been or might seem challenges to the outside world, oh sorry, that should be on silent, they I've managed to be, we did where I work, they give us some training last year, resilience training, and I've learned to be more resilient. So when I get knocked down, before where I'd get knocked down and it really hit me hard, now I have a better bounce back ability, if that makes, I mean, I kind of like, I'm not saying that I don't ever get knocked down, I don't feel it, But it's rather than getting knocked down and staying in that place, I tend to be able to bounce back more freely and to kind of observe the thought of it. And, you know, it's not real really. It's only as real as I make it in my own thoughts. So that's it really. That's the bits that I picked up this morning, and I've really enjoyed it so far. I'm just really annoyed that I'm going to miss Monday because of work. I know it's recorded, but like, it's not the same if you're not there. Do you know what I mean? It's just like I tried to sort out my shifts and everything so I could be off Monday, and I couldn't do it. So I know it is what it is, but it's just that I'd rather be there. Well, not there, you know what I mean? Be on when it's on, sort of thing. So that's me anyhow. So I just thought I'd share those few bits.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Eddie.
Right. Thank you.
I don't know. Do you want to say anything?
Yes.
I think one of the things that happened for me was I stopped being afraid of my own mind. And I allow myself to have all thoughts. I don't fight my mind anymore. I used to go and see therapists, and again, please don't, I'm not knocking anybody or telling anybody what to do. I propose an option. I propose something different. I used to get taught how to change my mind. And I never could. You know, it becomes a full-time job at that point. Rather than living, we're running away from our own thoughts. We don't fully engage with life because we're busy running away from our thoughts. We're not fully present in life because we're busy running away from our thoughts. It's a full-time job. There becomes no time or space for anything else because we're afraid of our own minds. And I remember I was with an awesome teacher of the principles. He was round Sid, phenomenal man. And him and I were sharing a stage at a conference. And this lady said, how do you stop yourself feeling these thoughts? How do you stop yourself feeling these thoughts, feeling these feelings, thinking these thoughts? And this man gave this massive explanation about how you do it. And I stopped, when it got to the end, I said, do you mind if I add something, what happened for me? I said, it was my relationship to thoughts that changed. My relationship to thought changed. My relationship to feeling changed. My relationship to reality changed. I said, I still have all the thoughts I would normally have had throughout my life. The difference is they don't have me. They don't have me. Like at one point, my thoughts would consume me and eat me up. It's not that I don't have my ups and down days. I have my ups and down days. I'm a human being. I stopped trying to escape being a human. And I embraced it. I embraced thought. What I was being taught when I was being taught to manage my thoughts, control my thoughts, you know, to suggest we could control our thoughts would be to suggest that we could step in front of the moment in time to choose the thought, to come back into the moment to experience it. I don't know about anybody else here on this screen, but I'm guessing I speak for everybody when I say I have all kinds of fecking mental thinking. I have all kinds. I have illegal thinking. I have moral thinking. I have totally downright disrespectful thinking. I have loving thinking. I have kind thinking. I always have had. I used to identify more with the negative thinking, if you want to call it that. if you want to split thought, you can't split thought, so don't. It's not negative. It's only negative if we believe it to be, so it appears as negative. But I used to identify more with that. I used to think that somehow that was more real. And you know, to change a thought, it's too late. The moment it's been thought, it is immediately in the past. We can't go back there to change that thought. It's too late. Don't forget, we live in the ever-permanent now. It's the only time the mind thinks is now. It's the only time that anything ever takes place is now. It's the nature of reality, is the ever-permanent now. So trying to control my thoughts would be to suggest coming out of the now, which is totally impossible. And to think that I need to change my thoughts is to go back in time, again, which is impossible. To change the thought, to come back to the now, to rewrite history, to rewrite what happened. What happened, happened. It's done. Leave it where it is. It's in the past. And the more I started to wake up within myself, and the more I started to see the illusory nature of my reality is an illusion. If it wasn't, everybody would see it. I would never have a disagreement with anybody because there'd be nothing to disagree about, because it would be reality. And if you look closely, if there was a true reality to which everybody saw, there would be zero need for language. What would there be to talk about? We would all already know, because it would be reality. The fact that we have language speaks to the fact. The fact that we have language speaks to the fact that one reality is trying to convey its message, how it is experiencing life, to the next reality. That's the sole reason for language. If there was an objective reality to which we were all subjected, of a true reality, which is as an experience, there'd be nothing to talk about. We would all just see it. There would never be a disagreement, because it would be reality and we would all see the same thing. The true reality is what Sid was trying to point us to. The true reality comes before the reality that we encounter as our life. The force of existence, the force of life, mind, consciousness, the power of thought, not what we think, but the power of thought. The space from which all thought arises. The singular space, the singular force from which all potentials of thought arise, always have done and always will do. Infinite potential. So for me, it was like letting go of everything. It was letting go of the having to do anything in life, having to be anything, having to try to do anything. It was just an acceptance that emerged. An acceptance that, you know what, sometimes my thinking is going to be crap. Sometimes I'm going to feel like shit. But the less I identified with it, the less it hung around. It was free to come and go. If you look closely, your mind is ever changing. It does it all by itself. You get upset, you get fed up, you get pissed off with somebody. What do? You take yourself away. Why do you take yourself away? You take yourself away to calm down. Or maybe you haven't taken yourself away. Maybe you have ended up in a scrap. But eventually you calm down. The mind equalizes itself at some point. Effortlessly. It just does and always has. Our problems come when we start to interfere with the mind. Trying to control the mind. I liken that to, if every single thought is like a wave coming from the same source, it's like walking out into the ocean trying to calm the waves by pushing them back into the water. Calm down, water. Calm down, water. Calm down, water. Calm down, water. Don't stop being turbulent, water. That's what we do to our mind. Stop being turbulent, mind, and we go to war with it. We go to war with our very own mind. Mum hates it when I say this, but a body that goes to war with itself is called motor neurons disease. It's not nice. A mind that goes to war with itself, is attacking itself, is not one that's ever going to find peace, because it's at war. Peace isn't found at war. You can't bomb your way to peace. You can't bomb yourself. You can't berate yourself into a peaceful state of mind. Peace, people think that war achieves peace. No, the only thing that achieves peace is when we put the weapons down, and instantaneously emerges. It's not something you achieve, it's just a consequence. Peace is just a natural consequence of putting down the weapons. And when we realize and we put down the weapons against ourselves and we realize we're okay, we're just thinking, and thought does all kinds of mad things. The war's over. Peace has an opportunity to come through. And I think one of the things it allowed me to be was more discerning with the thought that I entertain. I have all these thoughts come up, and sometimes then I eventually catch myself thinking, I go, what are you doing? I just draw back from it. No war. I just remove its power, my consciousness, my awareness to it. I take away its power. It's only me that gives a thought power. Why do I believe some thoughts over others? Why, when I stand at the top of a high building and I think about jumping off, do I not? Yeah, we're proposing a slightly different take on things here. We're hoping that people will leave this 3 days with a deeper understanding as to the nature of mind, the nature of thought, the nature of reality. And they will find peace, but it won't mean that they don't think they're mad thoughts. They can be at peace with thinking the mad thoughts. Because it's not the thoughts that create the suffering, it's the energy which we put into it. A thought left on its own doesn't do anything, has no power. It only has the power that we believe it to have. It goes for everything, addiction, everything. Ed, thanks so much, buddy. Thanks for your beautiful words. Anybody else? Put your hand up. Or just shout if you can't find it.
Hi.
Zoe.
So
Hiya, love.
I'm in the US and we had a severe windstorm last night. So at 3 a.m. I was on with you for the first segment, and boy, was I happy to be awoke at that time.
Oh.
It was so rich and a deep dive into a lot that I've been reflecting on around the illusory nature of how the ego and the part of us that is, I'm probably going to use words that aren't 3P language, but there's the I am essence of my true nature. And there's the I am not, which is all the stories, all the ideas and beliefs, and this past, what I was prompted to share just now, besides thank you. And I'm excited for your upcoming event. And I'm like, you're glowing, Jenny. You are absolutely glowing. Can't wait to get the news.
Thank you, love.
Yeah. So what I was prompted to share was this past week, now I kind of lost it. I got into this good feeling around the baby coming and this morning, but how I am so grateful to finally come upon this understanding, because it's like, and I'm going to use a metaphor, and I'm sorry, because I know everybody's going to have their own interpretation of what a metaphor means, but it's like I was so caught in what I thought was an injustice, and that I was outed, and the outside looking in, it was like everybody was invited to this party and I wasn't. And then I had a recent dear friend die of COVID, and weird things happen when people die, you know, it's just, and I was outside the loop of that. So I was building this whole case of righteous anger around what I perceived to be an injustice. And for 2 days, it had me by the short and curly. I just lost all peace and serenity. And it's like, when I have the last couple of years gotten an essence of that peace and that my true self, and have days of just pure bliss, not that bliss is the sought after thing, but a quiet mind and presence. It was like I caught myself shaking the bars of the prison, let me out, but it was my own thinking that had me locked up so tight. And then yesterday, which was probably 4 days after I got on this rant with myself, I found out, oh, it was random. I wasn't outed from this event. It was just the way the cookie crumbles, so to speak. It was an automated selection. So, and I was just going on and on. My question, when the contrast is so strong between our oneness with our true nature and the illusionary reality, sometimes is it just enough to know and we just ride it out? We have to go in the direction, it's just so dramatic, the changes now, that it's very painful.
I think we get less tolerant, it seems, when we have an experience of the peace or the bliss or the quiet mind. I think we sometimes come a little bit less tolerant of the times when we are really caught up. I love that you kind of answered your own question. It's actually, there is no stopping life, and we are going to get caught up. But I do think the snapback happens quicker. Mm-hmm. And I think we can learn from the lostness. And we also seem to get a sense of compassion for other people who get lost. So that in itself helps us get lost less often. And when you were speaking, I remember having a conversation with Keith Blevins, and I was talking to him about something that had been going on. And he said, the good old justified negativity. And he was speaking about how we can build a whole case and a story of why we're justified and how negative we feel and in our judgment. And he said, and that in itself, when the air goes out of that and you see it for what it is, you get a clearer view again. Mm-hmm. I think it sounds like you have a real sense that this isn't about never getting lost and caught up, but how wonderful it feels when we wake up again and get to see a clearer picture. But I think go ahead. I was going to say, I think the judgment becomes less. We stop thinking we're doing life wrong or it's supposed to be different than what it is, and we become more accepting of what is And actually in that, when we're not trying to force ourselves to change, we're not fighting our own mind, wanting it to be different, we just go with it. It seems we ride it quicker, and
life flows then, doesn't it?
yeah.
It's like, and people call it in the flow of life. It's like, what's being in the flow of life? It's not putting up any mental barriers against anything. You know, it's life becomes easier. I often like it. It's like the moment we start objecting to anything, we create friction within our own mind, and friction burns. You know, we feel that friction because we're not accepting of a thought that came in. We're not accepting of what's taking place externally. It doesn't mean we have to. This isn't about staying in a space of peace all the time. We're talking about living life. And whilst we are on this life, in this life for a finite amount of time, as a human being, we get to come in and we get to create and we get to be and we get to play. This isn't about not standing up for what you believe in. This is not passive. The principles are not passive. This isn't about rolling over and seeing injustice in the world and going, oh, it's just my thoughts. No. This is about gaining an understanding of life and then going out and living. Living life how you choose to live it. But you can choose it from freshness instead of old programming. People often talk about is programming. We're programmed. Nobody can program us except ourselves. You know, the news does a very good job of repeating things over and over and over and over again, things that the news wants us to pay attention to. Repeats it. Why? So it gets into our mind. They hope that at some point, at some level, we take it on as a belief so that it becomes a reality for us. And people who are more awake, it becomes quite difficult to program their minds. But the individual has to believe it for themselves. This is why companies spend millions on advertising. If it was as simple as the external world, or we can just program people, they'll just do it. They wouldn't need to spend millions. They just do it. But they have to spend millions because the only way that the advertising works is if it becomes part of your experience of life. And the only way it becomes part of your experience of life is if you're thinking about it and you believe in it. You see, this reality, we think of it as a three-dimensional fixed thing. It's not. It's an energy. It's all made of energy. People go, oh, okay, it's all made of energy. Cool, I get that. But what is energy? What is this stuff that science talks about? Everything's made of energy. The mind is energy. Everything's made of energy. The moment we give it a word, we think we know what it is. What is energy? What is the invisible force that creates? It's God. Same thing. What's God? Source. What's source? It's energy. We just throw words around us and then we assume we know what we're talking about. That's why wise people throughout time have said, I know I am wise, for I know nothing. We think we know stuff about this life, but we don't even know what it's created from. But we know it exists, and we know it's great and powerful. And everything is it, including ourselves. So that means that we are that. And we all lose our sense of peace and serenity. Yeah, it's great. It's great when we're in it. But I tell you what, my greatest gifts in my life have been my deepest sufferings.
Mhm. Mhm.
Would I choose them? Absolutely frigging not. Would I erase them from my life? No. Would I erase them from my past? No. I remember having a really beautiful conversation with Sue when not long after I'd woken up. She said, would you change anything about your life, Dave? I said, no. She said, why not? I said, because it's allowed me to be where I am now. She said, why is that? She said, I said, I've learned an awful lot through it all. It's helped me grow. She said, you want to erase any of the suffering? I said, no. So you wouldn't change anything? No. Sure. Sat back in a chair. I'd created mayhem as a kite at level. I created mayhem in my life. I upset a lot of people. And I thought to myself, and I said to Sue, I changed one thing, so change one thing. She said, what's that, Dave? I said, I would take away everybody else's suffering that I created along the way. Sue leant forward in a chair. She looked me right in the eye and she said, that's selfish of you. I'll never forget it. It's not a justification or a condonance of what I've done, but it's a recognition that people grow. It's not the only way we grow. It's not the essential part of growth, isn't suffering, but there can be a great deal of growth through suffering. Learning lessons the hard way. I learn everything the hard way.
Yes.
The hard way. I'm glad the gale was blowing.
Yeah, I as well. And just one last thing, and then I'll let you move on. This whole life is uncertain, and catching the thinking that starts layering upon whatever situation arises is the biggest insight I've had lately, is that I'm becoming more comfortable with not knowing. It's not tolerant of whatever. It's just, okay, well, it'll be interesting to see how this works out. Not in my time, but trusting that inner guide inside me, that wisdom, which is so gentle and so there, present all the time, that quite often I'll hear it and my intellect will override that, and then I pay the consequence. So thank you. I just really enjoy hanging out with you all, and it's lovely to be in your space and sharing this understanding. So gratitude.
Oh, loads of love, Zoe. Thank you so
for
much,
joining
sweetheart.
us. Whereabouts in America are you?
I'm in Sedona, Arizona.
Well, I've got a friend who went there for Christmas, so she just sent us some pictures, and I'd never known really what the landscape there was like, and it was phenomenal.
It's a massive beach, I think.
Well, red rocks, lots of red rock formations, and it's just beautiful desert.
Beautiful.
I miss the forests and the rivers, but I won't be here forever. So love you guys.
Hey, loads of love, Zoe. Love you too, love. Thank you, love. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Somebody messaged me a question, so if I read it out, do you want to?
Oh, they texted you?
Yeah.
It's organised. Oh, simple.
So can you talk a bit about how our feelings are there to guide us? I really struggle with this. things are quite hard personally at the moment. And when I feel anger and frustration, my thoughts feel so real and so justified. I act upon them and end up regretting them and hurting myself more. When we are feeling off, is that our helpful warning sign telling us not to trust our thoughts? And why do those thoughts feel so goddamn real if they're not?
I want to answer that in a way that I think this person perhaps doesn't want to hear it. I want to come away from thoughts. We're obsessed with thoughts. This is the thing. I want to draw a distinction between thought and thinking. Thought is the ocean. Thinking is the waves. We're obsessed with our thinking. Sid was talking about the power of thought. You know, if we start talking about thinking, where do you stop? Where do you stop? Thought is an infinite force. It has no bounds. You want to start talking about thinking, we'll talk about thinking forever and never get to the end of it. And we'll have missed the point. The power of thought is what creates all experience. It creates all behavior. It creates all feelings. It enlivens the physiology. It tells the heart when to beat. It tells the lungs when to breathe. Ultimately, it creates the universe. Everything is an idea of the force of the universe. That's why everything works. That's why everything works and everything flows. And we'll talk a bit about this, but it's why the environment, the ecosystem all works together, because it's well thought out. It's genius. It's a deeper intelligence than our intellect. Our intellect's trying to figure it all out. Our intellect's trying to figure out, how do I live this life when this life just continues to live? You can't live life. Life lives you. We're always obsessed with our thinking because we're afraid of it. Why are we afraid of thoughts? What is there really to be afraid of? I liken it often to an artist painting. The canvas is our consciousness. The medium, the paint, is thought. And from the moment we're born, we start painting. We paint fun things as we're younger, and we paint exciting things and dragons and knights and princesses. And at some point we start painting serious paintings because we think we have to. And then at some point in our life, we paint the most terrifying picture. And we're like, what the frigging hell? Like an artist painting a scary picture and then becoming afraid of it. The canvas is consciousness, the medium is thought. It's always the same thing. The same force we use to play as a child to generate the experience of, I'm collecting as much grass as I can because it's treasure on the playing field. Used to that. I think it's a universal thing. Is exactly the same force as I'm chronically depressed. It's the same thing. Yes, they create different experiences, but ultimately it's all experience. Each thought only has as much power as we give it. Do I still think that collecting grass is treasure now? No. No, I don't. In fact, it's one of the last things I want to do. But at one point, it was really important. I gave it a lot of attention and power. Now I don't. Why? Because my belief system's changed. Sid's message was not about look at your thinking, analyze it, change it, beat it up, beat yourself up. Sid's message was, did you know that there is this power called thought? And it's what creates all experience from birth till death and beyond. It's all the same thing. That force, you could change the word thought to God, to Source, to Allah, to Buddha, to Jehovah, to Hashem. You could call it energy. Doesn't matter. It's all the same thing. We're all God experiencing life. When God wakes up to itself and realizes that's true, it reorders the mind. This is why people experience death of ego. It's the mind reordering itself, not to the illusion that it's been living in, but to the truth of what is life. Well, life is a magically divine experience from birth till death. It's an inexplicable miracle. And we are all inexplicable miracle. I know this is not the direction that this person wants me to talk in, but to talk in the direction that that person wants me to talk in is to talk directly to the ego to fulfill its desire, which is the thing that's getting in the way. The belief in the thought in the first place. The thought that that thought or thinking is an enemy. When I'm talking about thought, I'm not just talking about thinking. I'm talking about a force that lives things. The intelligence that knows when it's cut itself so it can heal and how to heal. It takes intelligence to update an immune system. The immune system does not update itself in a random way. It does it in a very specific, ordered way because it's intelligent. Intelligence, thought.
I think also she asked why does it look so real? It would be a strange existence if our reality didn't look real to us. And the nature of the principles is describing how reality is created. So of course it looks real. I think, Zoe, you mentioned it, it's almost like you can have a bit of a separation. You can sort of start to see it from a different point of view. And things that have always just fooled you and looked completely real, you suddenly start to question. You start to see what they're actually creating in your life. Is this creating a beautiful life or a really difficult life? We can start there. Like it is simple. We get a feel for it. And it's funny because I know when I got the message, I laughed because we've had this conversation many a time.
And she's not on.
No, but she's listened to the recordings.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, no, she said she wouldn't be able to be on.
She was on.
And we always have a joke with her anyway.
Yeah.
But I said, you're looking for an answer to that question. What we're often trying to say to you is that isn't the question to be asking to find what you're looking for. And I think sometimes we have to kind of ask bigger questions than how do I fix myself, or how do I solve this problem in the world of form? It's looking at a bigger picture in a bigger way, seeing what's universal and true for all, rather than just looking for a personal answer to a problem that we experience. Because we've often say this, so many people say, yeah, let me just figure out all this stuff, all this personal stuff, and then I'll listen to the bigger picture. The thing is, it's the bigger picture, it's the expansion, it's the greater perspective that allows us to see a problem for what it is. A problem will always be a perspective of mind. A problem will always be a creation of how we're seeing something. And the solution will come to us in exactly the same way, via the mind. But if we keep focusing on the problem, trying to fix it, we will never get to see that that problem in itself is born and created from thought, from our own mind. And it is so convincing that the other thing we often point out is how naturally the mind falls onto something completely different, something that seems like the biggest problem. We maybe go and meet someone for a drink or watch a film. And when that falls off our mind, its reality is gone. It doesn't exist for us anymore. So we can see through its nature that it isn't something fixed and solid. Otherwise, it'd have to always just be there. We couldn't think anything else. But when our mind shifts onto something else, we're freed from it. So what we're looking for happens to us again and again throughout the day. Because it comes back to our mind, we then give it all of our attention again, it becomes real again. So it's starting to notice and see how the mind works, how a shift in consciousness or a shift in thought creates a whole new reality. But if that's possible, how could the reality we were thinking 5 minutes ago be true? And the more that we see it as an illusory, fluid, transient thing, the less gripping it becomes, the more we allow it to flow through us. But thank you for asking the question, because I know it's something that comes up for lots of people.
It is.
Anybody else? Keep thinking Kate's going to ask, Kate D.
There's just one thing I just wanted to add just at the end of that. It's not much, but...
Always interrupt Kate.
Yeah, it's Kate, isn't it? It's only Kate. It is that thing, you know, people who are trying to fix themselves never manage it. And it is literally because you can't fix what isn't broken. That person who asked that question is not broken, but she believes she is, and so she will appear so to herself. And she will create that in her world. But she's not. You cannot break the ocean. Sorry, Kate, were you going to say something, love?
I wasn't.
Oh.
Do you want me to? What?
Would you like to?
It's funny. Can you actually hear me? I'm in the car. It's funny because listening to you, it takes me back to, you know, the retreat that I came on, and it's like you can't, like, anyone listening to this, if they think they're going to hear this from Dave or from Jen, I think this comes out right, but you don't hear it from someone else. You hear it from, it's like when I was, you know, when you're trying to hear it from someone else, you're trying to sort of, like you say, fix, or you're trying to work this out, or you're trying to, you know, what is Dave saying? You sort of, I think that's what I tried to do for about 2 solid days. And then you realize you're going to hear it from within yourself. So because when you realize that, when you sort of know, look, it's sort of, you trust that it'll happen on its own, then there's less there's less sort of trying to work this out and trying to work out what the hell are they talking about, or what is this, you know, thought that, you know, what are they saying about thought and the waves, and you're trying to work it out, and then you're missing when you realize that actually it doesn't come from, I mean, Dave is pointing in you know, the way, in the amazing way that he does, and Jen, but it's always going to come from within you when you stop trying to work it out, and then you see that it was there all along. And it's when and then you have these moments, you know, like insight, all these words, insight, inspiration, you know, coming from within, where you connect with something that makes complete sense because it's coming from a space within you that knows. And it's never going to come from outside of you. You never have to actually, it's when you stop trying to work it out that it's like, oh my God, it was there all along. And then, you know, like I said before, when I was talking to you, Dave, it was like I had these moments when I would just ring Dave and go, oh, you know, no thought is true until you bring it alive. Because you start, you know, it's like all these different thoughts come in disguise. It's like, okay, I get that's not true, but, you know, you don't see just the nature of thought. When you start to really feel it, it comes from a feeling. It's like when Eckhart Tolle was talking about trying to describe how honey tastes, and it just gets lost in translation. You can't tell someone how honey tastes. You have to experience it for yourself, and that sometimes takes a letting go, just a letting go of everything that you thought you knew, letting go. And it's almost like I mean, it took me a while to let go. It took me 2 solid days of sitting with Dave and Jen before I had this shift when, you know, I just saw something different. And I had gone to see Dave and Jen with so much belief, so many labels that I believed, so much heaviness, so much, you know, fixing. I've got to fix my child, and, you know, you don't know, just let's get to the point of fixing, and, you know, yeah, I know about the waves, and you know, you sort of this whole thought thing becomes white noise, because like, yeah, thoughts create feelings. All right, I get that, but still fix my child, you know, still. And it's only when you stop trying to work it out, and then you're like, oh my God, there can be this huge shift within you which sees life inside out. And then it's such a relief, because you start to recognize thought. You start to see, like, oh, that's a thought. Oh, thank God, I don't have to focus on that. I don't have to think about it. Or, you know, sometimes, you know, you use your feelings as a guide, because sometimes you haven't even noticed what you're doing, and then your feelings are knocking. You know, you start to feel this anxiety or insecurity, and it's like, or your confidence, you know, and you what am I looking at? You know, what thoughts am I bringing alive? You know, I'm completely in the future that doesn't exist, or I'm in the past trying to change something that happened, you know, yesterday. It's over. You know, I'm resisting the now. I'm creating this. And you see it, and you wake up to it again and again and again. And this awareness, every time you think you get somewhere, there's nowhere to get to. So it's like awareness, it just grows, and it just grows. And I'm more aware now than I was 5 minutes ago. And it's this humility about, we don't actually know anything, and that's fine. And actually that's exciting, because actually there isn't any, when you start to feel the force that's running through all of us, when you start to notice it, when you start to, then it's like there's nothing to fear in your experience, because you're creating your experience. You're not the experience. So there's nothing to fear. And then you're more willing to, you know, there's more acceptance, there's less judgment, and you recognize that you're human, you get caught up in stuff, but you become more, you just stop looking at trying to change the outside world, because you go back within and you're like, what am I doing? What am I creating? It's not coming from my husband or my children, or it's always coming from me. It looks like it's coming from them, but the freedom that brings, because I spent, you know, 48 years, 49 years, sort of trying to manage the outside world, believing every single thought. And then everything flipped on its head, and it's like life is so much easier, because I cannot manage the outside world. I cannot manage everyone else's, you know, what they're going to say, how they're going to react. But I can know when I'm taking it personally. I can know when I'm getting involved in all the waves. I can know when I'm feeling criticism, or when I'm, you know, I'm getting caught up in, you know, it could be criticism, it could be praise. Except my wave's bigger, my wave's smaller. It's like, you know, you start to see when you're just getting really involved in all the waves. And then there's always that space within that just knows, well, actually, you know, like Dave says, I'm the ocean. When I'm not looking at my experience, when I'm not thinking about it, when I'm, you know, we don't have to think all the time. I mean, that's the other thing. I didn't even realize that. You know, I used to believe every thought, and now it's like, I don't have to, you know, I don't have to think at all when I'm, you know, but it's starting to notice. I think everyone experiences this, but they're not aware of it. And then you become aware of it, and then it's, you know, life just gets just a gentler ride. But you still experience it. You're still human, but you know, it's I'm going to stop now.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Kate is a Fiona Bruce voiceover.
Yes, right. I'm going to put myself on mute.
You should be a Fiona Bruce voiceover. It's going to move in a second. But you just reminded me, we did a 6-month training out in South Africa in Johannesburg. And there was a lady there, she had 14 kids. Was it 14?
Yeah.
14 kids. I went round her house, she's tiny. I mean, she was barely 5'2" or something like that. Skinny little thing. I went round her house and she said, oh, this is, who are you? And he went, number 10. This is number 10. This is number 4. Like, each kid had a number. And halfway through this lady she was Orthodox Jewish. And she was really kind of concerned about how it was going to affect her Torah and her learnings, her religion. One of the things she said was, I can hear the Torah deeper now. That's what she said. She could hear the Torah deeper. I can hear its deeper meaning. And the other thing she said was just what you said just then, Kate, was, I've stopped trying to live everybody's life and manage everybody's lives. She said they have their own lives to live. She said, I'm stopped trying to manage 15 other people, including her husband's, 15 other people's lives in order for her to be okay. Freedom. Mater.
What I was going to say is when I first came to realize the principles, I realized all the bricks I built for myself. You know, I can't do this and I'm scared of heights and I'm not particularly keen about being in this situation. But once you actually realize that you've made your own little tunnel and you live in it, and it confines you to what you're used to and what you know, whether that's good or bad. And once you sort of, we used to say it was like unzipping your coat and stepping out into a whole fresh experience, that there is no beginning and no end, and you can do absolutely anything. You can go anywhere, you can do anything, you can be anything. You don't have to take anything seriously, and you're not responsible for anybody else's happiness, as you were saying just before. Once I realized that I'm not responsible for anybody else's happiness apart from my own, then life just got an awful lot easier. Thank you.
I often use my mum. That sounds terrible. I'll start that one again. I often use my mum's analogy of that tunnel. I remember when you once said it at a community group, and I use it as a metaphor because I think it's such a beautiful thing. Because what you actually said, Mum, was I innocently and without knowing had lived my life with these beliefs, adopted these beliefs throughout my life, through which I created a tunnel. And I stand at the mouth of this tunnel, and all I can see is what I believe. Each brick is a belief. And I love what you said, because you said, I became narrow-minded and tunnel-visioned. We all do that. And then you said, but bit by bit, the more you started to gain understanding into whatever the hell this is we're talking about, the more you had insight and realization into it. The bricks started to fall down, and you started to see more potential, and more opportunity showed itself to you, and you started to think differently. And all of a sudden, you weren't afraid of heights. New thought came to you and said, just put one foot in front of the other and you'll get there. And things like that, new inspirational thought. I love that analogy, Mum, because I think it fits it so beautifully. We become narrow-minded and tunnel-visioned because of the beliefs that we carry, the solid, what we believe to be solid thoughts or solid factual reality creates this tunnel through which we become narrow-minded and tunnel-visioned. Love it. Thanks, Mum. We've got 5 minutes left of this section. Anybody else? Who?
3 minutes.
No, 5 minutes better.
No, I want people to have a nice break before Dicken comes in, so they can. You want to start?
Timekeeper here. Go. Or if nobody's got anything to say, we can have 3 minutes extra break. It's up to people. But don't feel you can't speak because you won't. Mind you, I'm eating into this 3 minutes now. Show up, Hillary. Okay.
I was going to say, 2 minutes. One thing you were just saying about, the lady who'd said that what did you say? Her religion,
She was Orthodox Jewish.
Yeah, and it made more sense.
Mm.
Yeah, because I, at university, at university I studied, theology and religious studies, and I just sort of went through the motions really, and none of it really came alive. None of it really made a huge amount of sense. You're studying different religions, and you're studying, different interpretations of the New Testament, and then now it all makes sense. Now, when I think about what Jesus was saying, it makes perfect sense. And things keep popping into my head, different parables and different, different sayings. And it's like, it all just completely comes alive. And I was talking to a friend of mine who is, I think she's Methodist, or I'm not quite sure, but she said, Kate, so I was, I was sharing this with her, and she said, Kate, I don't know if she's on now or not, but she said, Kate, I've realized that I didn't have faith, but now I do, and it was amazing. And I realized that so do I. It's not a religious for me. I'm not religious, and it's not, but I have faith, and it's all come alive from within me. And it's amazing how that happened. It's not, it's when she said that, and then I said it as well, it's like, now I have faith. And that's 2 minutes is up now.
Love.
Thank you, Kate.
Just faith in life. faith in yourself. I think I also gained a far deeper respect for faith in goodness, faith in love and its power. Awesome. Right. Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everybody. We will have a 15-minute break, and then we've got Dr. Dicken Bettinger.
Or UK time.
Or UK time. 15 minutes. Leanne, ace timing, love. We're going for a break. Mwah. Welcome back. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a wonderful day. And to top off this wonderful day, we've got a wonderful man. He's a good friend of ours. Excuse Rusty. He's aware that a dog's being fed now. We've got our friend here, Dicken. Dr. Dicken Bettinger. Many of you will be aware of Dicken. Some of you won't. But those that are know how beautiful he is. He's a good friend and we deeply respect him. And anytime we do these kind of events, we love having him on. So Dicken, thank you so much for taking the time out to be with us today.
Yeah, just thank you. I think whenever we arrange anything, you're always someone that we want to be part of it. And we've got to run a few together in person, which has been amazing. And I think this is the next best thing. As with COVID, you know, people aren't traveling, but getting to have you here virtually is amazing. And I know so many people have been looking forward to the event and also to listen to you. Every time you speak, I think you bring something fresh. There's always something you've seen. And I'm just, I feel grateful to have had you in my life. You've always supported personally and with work. You've always supported me and us together. And I think your gift to this world is just being one of the most loving, gentle human beings that I've ever met. So thank you. And yeah, I don't want to take up any of your time.
No.
So thank
Bless you. And you've had more time to prepare. Bless you.
Well, you're going to hear it talk straight off the top of my head.
Bless you. Thank you, Dicken.
First of all, Jenny and Dave, congratulations. It's for what?
Yeah. No, I'm kidding.
Seems like you're expecting a new family member.
It does. We're getting rid of a Jack Russell and getting a baby.
Yeah.
Thank you, mate.
Well, it certainly makes me think of the most incredible thing in life, which is birth. And it seems like maybe that would even be a good place to start, because like right now, I'm looking out my window and there's beautiful, beautiful tall pine trees and the Pacific Ocean and some islands. And at one point, none of that existed. And it all came into existence, which is a miracle. No one can explain birth, that out of nothing, things appear. That's the mystery of life. That's what my teacher, Sydney Banks, called the one principle. I think it's pretty interesting. A group of famous scientists recently published a report, and they've been studying the energy in the universe. And they said, if you take everything that can be seen with instrumentation, so the most powerful telescopes, the most powerful subatomic microscopes, everything that has form, everything that appears and can be either seen or measured, everything that comes and goes, you put all of that together, all of it together, and it only accounts for 4% of the universe. 4% of the energy of the universe. So you say, well, what's the other 96%? And they say that's dark energy, invisible, can't be seen. Some people call that field of energy, out of which forms arise. Some people call that the spiritual dimension of life because it's invisible, but it's dynamic. It's dynamic because it has the power to birth. It has the power to birth everything that exists. So if you look around, everything you see at one point did not exist. At one point, this earth did not exist. At one point, there was an infinite field of spirit. And then there began to be creation and new life was formed. And that's the miracle of life. The absolute miracle of life. And so you begin to understand that in terms of metaphor, there's this infinite field that's completely still. There's no movement because there is no thing to it. So people call that the great nothingness. Some people call that the great nothingness. Some people call that the mystery. Some people call that the stillness. Some people call it the silence. Some people call it the essence of life. Some people call it the creative spirit. Some people call it God. There have been different words used trying to describe what is impossible for the intellect to understand, because it can't be conceptualized. And that's where we come from. As a matter of fact, that dimension of life is what's living us right now. Something is creating mental activity inside of every single human being. There's some power that's creating it. Just like, if you look at it very scientifically, if most of you, I assume, are looking at either a computer or a phone screen, and it wouldn't be able to broadcast my image from across the world unless there was some power source. And if you have no power source, they would never call what you're looking at a phone or a computer because it wouldn't operate. And it's the same with us. Without this power source that we're intimately connected to, we are connected to the energy source of life. And it's birthing us at this moment. It's beating our hearts. It's breathing us. In some spiritual traditions, they call it the breath of life. In some spiritual traditions, they call that dimension of life that we're intimately connected to, that's living us. You call it the heart, not the physical heart, the spiritual heart, because it pumps life into life, brings it to life. And not only out of this stillness does it bring things to life, but it animates whatever it brings to life. It operates it, it moves it. The Latin word for animate is it's anima. And that's the root of the word animation. That's why some people call that dimension, when they talk about human beings, they call it our soul. And they'll say the complete human being is mind, soul, and spirit. All, they can't be separated, in the same way that a wave has form, and inside the wave is water. And if you go deep enough into the wave, you discover the ocean. So Sid Banks had an enlightenment experience. He suddenly saw this buzzing field of white light in front of him, and he felt drawn into this field, drawn into this field of energy, drawn into this field of spirit. We said, Sid, did you have a near-death experience? You went into the light, you had profound experiences of love and unity. You came back. A lot of people are writing about near-death experiences, people from cultures all over the world. He said, no, I didn't go partway into the light and then come back. I went all the way through to the other side. I had a complete death experience. And it was the most beautiful experience beyond anything I could imagine. And I realized our oneness, our unity, and that we're all connected to this field of energy intimately, always have been, always will be. And he said, I realized in an instant that there are three fundamental qualities to this formless, infinite, formless field of energy. It's intelligent because it knows how to create and operate whatever it creates. It's, you look at a little single cell amoeba, it knows how to find food, and it goes in one end, comes out the other end of that cell. Knows how to operate, knows how to live, knows how to move, knows how to find food. I don't know if any of you read books about birds or octopus. Or trees. Talk to Dave Ellery about the amazing intelligence behind trees. Dave and I have walked through the Lake District many a time talking about the marvelous way in which the intelligence of nature helps everything grow and change and survive and be part of this eternal ecosystem. An intelligence. In human beings, often that intelligence has been taught, the word used for that when talking about human beings is wisdom. So let's say someone can have a great computer intelligence, but that doesn't mean they're wise. Someone can have an extremely high IQ, that doesn't mean that they have a lot of common sense. It's available to everybody. So one characteristic of what we're all connected to that's living us is that it's wise. Another characteristic is it's aware. It's what allows anything that's created to be aware. Everything that's created has a degree of awareness and responds to heat and pressure and light and stimulus. The other thing about this infinite field of energy is that it creates boundless variety. It's very creative. So creative, aware, and wise. This is why I can go anywhere in the world, with any group of people and say, you have three fundamental characteristics. Divine thought, divine consciousness, divine mind. Or you can just say, you think. Something allows you to think and have experiences. Something allows you to be aware of your experience and be aware of where experience is coming from. And your mind is capable of far greater things than you've ever realized, because your mind is way more than just your computer. It's an intelligence that knows how to create and operate the universe, and you're connected to that energy. Sometimes my teacher, Sid Banks, would call these gifts. They're gifts that allow us to experience life. I'm enjoying those gifts right now. I woke up this morning and I am built to have experiences just like anybody else. And there's something that's living us. Some people talk about the living God, not a God of concepts, ideas, whatever it is that's living us. So I wake up, and as soon as I'm awake, my thinking is creating whatever I'm feeling. So I can go, oh, I had a really nice sleep, or I can go, oh God, another day, I'm not ready. I didn't get enough sleep last night. My dog was up half the night. Oh. Wherever our thinking goes, we're going to feel. Whatever we think, we're thinkers. Whatever we think, we're going to feel. It's an inescapable beauty that allows us to have experiences so that I can go out with my dog in the morning and we can snuggle for half an hour. And as my mind gets quieter, this is something that's discoverable by any human being. When our mind gets quieter, we feel more the intimate connection that exists in the universe. We feel closer to anything in front of us. When my mind gets quieter, I feel closer to my wife. When my mind gets busy, I just experience whatever I'm thinking about. She could be sitting right next to me, and I would be so consumed by my thinking, I wouldn't even experience her next to me. When my mind gets quiet, our senses wake up. It's another gift. I go for a walk in the woods all the time. There's woods everywhere around me. I'm actually on an island and it's wooded and it's trails everywhere. I love going for walks with people, and sometimes we're so caught up in thinking about things and talking to each other, we don't even see the trees, literally. We don't experience beauty. When our minds quiet down, that's all we can experience is beauty. The person that I'm with seems beautiful, no matter who it is. The trees. Took my grandkids. Every day we go to the beach, some beach, the one out in front of us or other beaches around. It is unbelievable watching a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old in nature. Some of you know this with your kids or your grandkids. And when human beings have less thinking, they feel more connection. More thinking, less connection. So little kids are very present, which means they have less thinking. That's another way of talking about the present moment. This is why there's such a big fuss about the present moment and living in the present moment, because we have less thinking, our senses come alive, and we feel the connection that exists in the universe, that we're all part of this same infinite field of energy. So we begin to feel an intimate unity with life, the quieter our minds get. This is why it's very helpful for us to be students of the principle of thought, because if we don't understand that it's thought creating our experience, we'll be bored and think it's the situation, like I did for years. Oh, this situation, oh, this person is so boring. It says, when I'm in my thinking, everything dumbs down. My senses dumb down. I dumb down. I stop feeling the connection. Right? So I go, oh, I don't like this. Oh, I don't like that. I start becoming, anybody who is in there thinking all day long will be living a life of dissatisfaction. Why is that? Because our senses dumb down when we're caught up in our thinking. And as our heads clear, our senses come alive. That's why sometimes people would say to me, Dicken, what are you talking about? Come to your senses. This other divine gift, we're given this capacity to be aware. So we talk about levels of consciousness, levels of awareness. The more thinking we're caught up in, and the more the negative thinking we're caught up in, the less open and aware we are to life as it is, because we're so caught up in the contamination of our conceptual mind. So Sid says, okay, you're looking for pure thought, which is a mind free of thinking. You're looking for pure consciousness, which is the present moment, awareness free of the contamination of concepts, in particular judgmental concepts. Now, Dalai Lama says, you know what love is? It's a mind free of judgment. That's why I got such a kick out of watching my grandkids on the beach yesterday, fully present. Okay, my little 2-year-old granddaughter. We're on a beach and there's sand and there's stones, and she would find a sandy spot and it's very wet, and she'd take her both hands and she would plop them down into the sand and then close her hands to get a handful of sand, and it would leave little bird prints on the sand. And then she would run over to the ocean and throw the sand and watch it splatter on the surface of the ocean and giggle, and just giggle. Her senses were so alive, no judgments, no worries, no shoulds, no shouldn'ts. Just fully present, awake, alive in the moment. In Tibetan Buddhism, they call that state of mind newborn consciousness. Jenny and Dave, it's such a treat to hold a baby and just witness and experience their state of mind of total presence, no concepts, not caught up in the conceptual mind, just presence. We're all born awake, aware presence. So that's another word for soul. It's another word for pure consciousness. Presence. I have friends who are Benedictine monks, and they talk about resting in the presence of God. There's some people I go for a walk in the woods with who fall out of their thinking, and they're resting in this awake, aware, creative presence. So they see beauty everywhere. My wife is an artist. Artists know the benefit of a quiet mind. That's why they fall in love with doing art. We're driving around in a car. My wife loves the experience of beauty. It's what shapes, molds, and defines her life. It's her New Year's wish for everybody that people experience more beauty within themselves and in the world. To fall into the space where we can't help but to experience beauty. I worked with a woman who was clinically depressed. She had never experienced the beauty of nature. And as she learned about the role thought played, and she began to fall out of her personal thinking more and more of the time, she came to her senses. And one day she came in and she just was sitting there in front of me with tears rolling down her face saying, "It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. The colors, there's colors, Dicken. This world has color. There's colors everywhere. I've never seen colors before." When my older granddaughter, who's almost 13 now, oh my God, when she was 5 years old, she turned to me and we're in the car and she goes, "Poppy, Poppy, I have magic eyes." I say, "What do you mean, Eva?" She says, "Everywhere I look, things sparkle." It's our natural state. Presence. Being present is the only thing human beings can't do, because if you try and do presence, you're thinking. And trying is thinking that creates stress. If you try to have a quiet mind, if you try to be happy, you're thinking of stress. That's the paradox. That's the joke. The instant we stop trying, there's presence. Such a joke. Sid says, this is one of the most profound aspects of what I learned from this man, Sidney Banks. He said, every human being, no exception, is one thought away from well-being. And we're all going, those of us that were studying with Sid in the early days, we're all going, come on, not me. I'm not one thought away from well-being. I am so anxious. I am so depressed. I am so, it's hard work. And it's going to take a long time to find my well-being. And he said, no, you're a thought away from your well-being. And one time talking to a group of women who had just gotten out of jail, who had had horrific past lives, he was talking to them about how the past is an illusion. It's just some memories we have that exist in the present moment, but there is no past. And he was talking about when you understand the nature of memory, you're free. It's just some thoughts coming through. If you don't pay attention to them, they come and go naturally. And then he said, you're a thought away from well-being. And for the first time, I heard him say, and do you know what that thought is? Now, my ego got very excited because I was going to memorize whatever the thought was that was the thought of well-being, and I would think it for the rest of my life. I was a doer, a seeker and a doer. Oh my gosh. So he says, you know what that thought is? Thoughtlessness. State of no thought. He says, state of no thought doesn't mean you don't have thoughts. It just means you don't give your attention to a single one. You just ignore any thoughts. They just come through. That's another way of talking about the present moment. It's another way of his saying what every human being, whether they know it or not, is looking for pure thought. Not contaminated thoughts full of judgments. I'm not as smart as other people. I'm not lovable. I'm a failure. I'm no good. I can't do this. You're a jerk. You're so dumb. I can't believe you're doing that. What's wrong with you? I don't like you. I don't like myself. I don't like this situation. I don't like doing the dishes. I don't like washing the floors. Those are just concepts. We weren't born with any of those because I watched my grandkids before they developed their conceptual mind. And they're free of that, which is why they live, most very young kids live in awe and wonder most of the time. Their senses are wide open. They get upset, but it flows through very quickly. That's called resilience. That's a hallmark of well-being. If you listen carefully, you'll hear this wisdom teaching anywhere you go. In AA, they say we're connected to a higher power. However you think of that, it doesn't matter, because however you're thinking of it isn't it, because it can't be contained by concepts. It's like whatever you think love is, it's not that. No concept can explain what love is. You fall in love, there's no concept that's going to do justice to it. And if you try to explain it to someone else using words and concepts. So Sid would say over and again, if you want to discover the beauty of life, if you want to find your well-being, if you want to have a direct experience of your connection, your intimate connection with everything, there's only one way for any of us. We have to go beyond all concepts. Just for a moment, just let go of every single thing you're thinking, just for one little moment. You can pick it up anytime you want to, anytime you want to, anytime you want to. The other day, I was talking with a suicidal teenager. This beautiful, beautiful girl who is living in the torment of negative thought a good part of the day. And she had no clue that it was a thought problem. She thought it was a life problem. So as she starts learning about it being a thought problem, and at one point I just suggested to her, I'm just curious, would you do me a favor, just for a moment, would you just let go of everything you're thinking Just rest in this precious present moment. Just rest. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to figure out. Just be, just for one moment. And I said to her, just be aware of the state of mind you're in when you're not holding thought, you're fully present, you're just resting. Just be aware of that space you're in right now. Just rest in that space. Now, allow a word to come from deep inside you that you feel describes that space you're in. I said, what word comes to mind? First word that came to mind to her was freedom. For some people, that's the first time they experience freedom from concepts, freedom from I should, I shouldn't, I need, I want, I have to, I can't, all those concepts. Freedom from concepts is what peace of mind is. So she goes, freedom. I said, okay, rest in the freedom space. Rest in your freedom space. Allow another word to come. She goes, calm. I said, wow, that's nice. He said, did you know that the freedom space and the calm space is always there inside of you? It's your soul. It's always there, never comes and goes. We can drop into it anytime. Now rest in the calm freedom space. Let another word come. See, I'm introducing her to what we all have and all are. Remember I said essence, three things in essence? Wide open creative space, the principle of thought, wide open awareness, wide open wisdom, a connection to all of life that's already true, which is love. Let another word come. She used the word connected. I hadn't used that word. It's a universal experience with people. Some of you may experience falling in love. You know what falling in love with? You're with someone. You get so present with them, you fall out of all concept and your mind opens up because it's not holding a single thought at that moment, and your heart opens up. It's a formula that's been talked about in spiritual teaching for centuries: open mind, open heart. Closed mind, caught up in thought. My wife says you're either caught up in thought or you're not. So here's a suicidal teenage girl discovering her inner beauty and being shocked to find out that it's always there, underneath, beyond her thinking. That's what I learned from my teacher. I didn't know that. And I had been a psychologist for 10 years before I came across Sid Banks. And I didn't know I had perfect well-being inside. I thought I didn't have it, and I had to work hard for years to develop it. No one, my wife said to me, I don't know anybody who tries harder to have well-being than you do, Dicken. And I thought it was a compliment. You know, I was meditating 4 hours a day. I was doing affirmations in my notebook every day, and I had gratitude journals, and I trained myself to wake up at REM sleep. So I recorded 5 full-length dreams, and every day I would work on my dreams to try and figure out my life. And I had cognitive notebooks where I would challenge the content of my thinking and try and reframe it. I did therapies, name a therapy, I had done it. Right? If gaining well-being required hard work, I wasn't going to be shy about it. And I meet Sid Banks, and he says, you already have what you're working so hard to get. Just relax into it, and you'll discover it's always been here. Beyond our thinking, content, beyond form. Whoever you think you are, you're not. That's only 4% of who you are. 4%. Your body, your thought content, your feelings are 4% of your being. We're human, 4%, being 96%. Sid would laugh at 96%. He would say infinite, because he would say, go beyond thought into infinity. Discover this spiritual dimension for yourself that people have been making a fuss about for centuries. At one point, I was talking with Sid about when people started finding out about his enlightenment experience and what happened. He said at one point, 200 people a day were coming by ferry to this little island where he lived, looking for him. And I went, oh my God, Sid, what did you do? And he said, I told them to go home. I said, go home. He said, the wisdom you're looking for, you won't get from another person. You can only find that wisdom deep within the quiet of your own mind. No one is wiser than you. That would be like one way of saying, I'm more ocean than you are. Na, 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 na. Rumi talks about the ocean of consciousness. Drop down into that sea, and you will see. Your senses come alive, and you see life fresh. It's very practical, very, very practical. I'll come back to my wife, and then I'll give you another practical example. Very practical. She's driving around in the car. She's an artist. She loves to paint landscape paintings. In a quiet mind, she can't help but to see beauty. So she's pulling over all the time to take pictures. Takes a long time to go to the store with my wife. And she's taking pictures. She comes back and she puts the pictures up around her easel for inspiration. She's not going to paint the picture. She's using those for inspiration. And then I've asked her about her process, and I've witnessed it many a time. She doesn't start painting because she understands the connection between a quiet mind and the experience of love and beauty. She knows that knows, not intellectually, she knows the truth of that because she's experienced it thousands of times. So before she starts painting, she either sits quietly or listens to her favorite music or reads some of her favorite poet, Mary Oliver, and just, I said, what are you doing? She says, I want to be in the feeling of beauty that I was in when I saw this scene originally. And I can't paint until I experience that same feeling. And as soon as she feels that feeling, there's wisdom in that feeling. When we get quiet, we just know what to do and how to do it without thinking about it. It's an intelligence beyond the intellect. You can call it common sense, you can call it intuition, you can call it just knowing, pure knowledge as opposed to information. Intuition, gut feeling. But the knowing in that feeling moves her hand. The knowing in that feeling picks her colors. The knowing in that feeling can draw from things she's learned that's found in memory and draw on that to integrate wisdom, working together with the intellect to integrate. You get the, as Sid would say, the best of both worlds, guided by wisdom. The intelligence guided by wisdom. I found out as a parent when I'm caught up in my irritated, annoyed, bothered thinking I'm a horrible parent, I just can't do very well. I just don't think clearly and I make poor decisions. And when I open my mouth, it comes out sounding like, rah! Pick up your clothes. Wait, hey, how many times have I told you, hey, stop it? When I understand that's just normal, I'm just caught up in some thoughts. And if I leave it alone, it'll settle down and pass quickly. I'm a thought away from the present moment at all times. Rest in that space. It's the only way then that we get new and fresh thinking, new and fresh feeling. And then I bring that feeling and I don't even have to think about what to do as a parent or how to do it because it's full of a wisdom that's not of the intellect and it can't be found in books. It can only be found, as Sid says, deep within the quiet of your own being, presence. Mindfulness is the current word being used for being fully present, awake. It's not a technique, it's our natural state. Doing mindfulness is not mindfulness. In Buddha's teaching, that's conditional mindfulness as opposed to unconditional mindfulness, which can't be done. So sometimes it would say, there's nothing to do, just be yourself, just be. Just relax, just be yourself right now. It doesn't matter what mood you're in, it doesn't matter what you're feeling, just be. And you begin to see that the instant we're just being, we start to open up and all of a sudden there's the tree and here's my hand and here's my voice. And we're falling back into this position of awareness, which is before the senses, because we can be aware of any of our senses. And that awareness is not in us, we're in this infinite field of awareness. We're going, as Sid would say, you have to go from form to the formless, from the physical to the spiritual. You won't find your answers in the world. Fall into this quiet and you'll find all the answers you're looking for. And it's a feeling. And in that feeling, there's the knowing that will guide you through any difficulty, through any problem. It's practical. Because I learned this first in a very practical way, dealing with my kids when they were young. It helped me become a better parent and a parent who learned to really enjoy parenting rather than feel like it was a constant struggle and effort and battle. The simple formula, less thinking, more love, really helped me as a parent. More thinking, more dissatisfaction, more judgment, more shoulds coming out of my mouth. You want to drive a kid crazy, tell them they shouldn't feel what they're feeling. So when we fall out of our thinking, there's a feeling of connection, which can take many different forms, but its fundamental nature is love. So Sid would say, love is always the answer. It's always, always the answer. You find that quiet and that feeling. And in that feeling is a knowing, and it will guide you through any difficulty you have in life. For 16 years, I worked with presidents of companies and business executives and did leadership programs and team building and problem solving. And one company was a multi-billion-dollar company, and I was working with the leadership teams of this company. And they discovered how practical it is to have an understanding where you understand that it's only our thinking that gets in the way of presence. The only thing that gets in the way of presence and deep feeling and deep knowing. And so they began to, when they would feel tension, stress, or upset, it became a friendly reminder that they were just doing a lot of thinking, period. And that when they would let go of that thinking, rather than think harder, most adults, when they're upset, do more thinking rather than have that be a reminder of their freedom space, their wisdom space, their heart, their love space, their knowing space. It's all the same space. So that teams in a business, the more presence, the more job satisfaction. If I think about anything too long, I'll start getting dissatisfied. It's like the Rolling Stone song, Can't Get No Satisfaction. Couples that do a lot of thinking become very dissatisfied with each other quickly. You do less and less thinking, they fall in love again over and over again, fall into love, fall into deeper feeling. Learn that if you bring deeper feeling to a relationship, it gets better. It's our birthright. It's right there under our nose. It's always been there. Doesn't go anywhere. The ocean doesn't go anywhere. The wave can do all kinds of things, but the ocean is still there. Look within. If you go beyond thought, form to formless, physical to the spiritual, preoccupation to presence, head to heart. There's a feeling, a silence, a feeling, and a knowing. Always, for anybody. My grandson, who's 5, it's often at that age, kid starts having more and more concepts of what could happen to them. And they start worrying and imagining and getting anxious, and often fears, strong fears start showing up at that age. So my grandson has been having trouble falling asleep. And he asked me if I would put him to bed. So I went in with him and I start reading a book, and his mind is going 10,000 miles an hour, and he's like frenetic, hyper, bouncing off the walls. And it's like, whoa, how's this going to work out for bedtime? It's understandable. When I do a lot of thinking, I get frenetic too. So I would just stop reading and just be with him with his frenetic. No judgment, just being with him. Kids are drawn to presence. Dogs and cats and horses are drawn to presence. It's tangible, right? So pretty soon he comes over and he sits next to me, and I start reading again. And then he's up, and then I just stop and I'm present with him, laughing, present. Pretty soon he comes back, and then I said, Reed, I'd like to tell you a story. Let's both of us lie down, put our heads on this beautiful pillow, and I'll tell you this story. And you can help me. I did this with my kids. I did this with his father. Did this with other grandkids. I call them busy stories. So I start off the story to him, and I said, there's this little boy, and it was late at night, and he got into bed, and you know what was underneath his bed? His dog, Beezy. That's where his dog, Beezy, liked to sleep, because he liked to protect him all night long while he was sleeping. Help him feel really safe. But Beezy was an adventurous spirit. And at some point in the night, who knows when, Beezy got up and opened the window. And the little boy said, what are you doing? And he says, I'm going on an adventure. Do you want to come? And they jumped out the window. It's very funny, as a high school kid, this was my life. I'd go out the window late at night. You go out the window, and we're going on an adventure, and they walk down the street together, and it's all quiet, and they go into the woods, and they can hear the owl hooting, and they can see the moon through the trees. And they walk deeper into the woods, and they come to a clearing. And you know what they saw in the clearing? And I wait, and he tells me. And he goes, lots of monsters. I said, yes, I saw lots of monsters. And they were both really afraid, and they were running and running, and the monsters were coming behind them. And all of a sudden, through the clearing, they saw a cabin, and it had smoke coming out, and he ran up to the cabin and knocked on the door. And you know who answered the door? We go on with the story, and pretty soon there's magicians and there's elves, and the dragon comes to save them, and then they ride on the back of the dragon and they go up to the mountain, and then they find the princess, and the princess joins them in the adventure. And oh my gosh, this, he goes, can we do chapter 2 tomorrow? Can we do chapter 3 tomorrow? I said, yeah, there are so many chapters in this book, Reed. I mean, this book goes on and on and on, so many adventures to be had. Now, here's the deal. First night, remember, he's having trouble sleeping. His mind is getting quieter because kids respond to presence and feeling. His mind is getting quieter. He fell asleep twice while I was telling him the story. And then every little noise, he'd wake up and say, is that mommy? Is mommy coming to put me to bed? Is mommy gonna cuddle with me? I gotta cuddle, I gotta cuddle. I can't go to sleep unless I cuddle with mommy. And then I'd continue the story, he'd fall asleep, and then he'd wake up. And so after a while I went in, and his mom came in and couldn't believe how quiet he was and how settled, and he fell asleep very quickly. The second night, as his mind got quieter and quieter, I was toward the end of the story, he fell asleep. I went out. Half an hour later, he woke up. He called out, his mom went in. He fell right back to sleep. The third night, he fell asleep almost as soon as I started the story, and he slept all night. Presence. The greatest gift we can give someone. You don't have to know what to do or what to say, because when we get quiet, there's a feeling, and out of that feeling, there's all the guidance you need. My friend Elsie Spittle calls it being mentored by mind. In AA, they say, let go and let God. What do you let go of? What they call our stinking thinking. So we wake up out of thinking and drop into the state of no thought. Our senses come alive. We experience pure consciousness. And in that, there's always a quiet and a feeling. And in that feeling, this deeper intelligence that runs the universe moves through us and guides us. Intuition, common sense, clarity, perspective, brings us new and fresh thinking, creativity, insight, inspiration, motivation, aspiration, clarity. All the things human beings want come from within and are found within. Within just means not within our body, but beyond the physical, beyond the 4%. I told my daughter when she was 14, before you leave home, I want you to know 3 things. I want you to know that your feelings are created from your own thinking. And more and more you'll be going, why would I keep thinking about this if it makes me feel this way? And you'll let it go. And you have less and less and less thinking that creates tension, stress, and upset. you become resilient. When she was 14, she had an insight about thought where her level of understanding went right past mine. She understood it deeper than I did. She became more resilient than I was. So all of a sudden, she's my teacher. Or the wisdom coming through her was my teacher. And I'd ask her every day what she was seeing and learning. I said, the second thing I want you to learn is that in a quiet mind, in presence, in the present moment, whenever we're resting in the present, you'll begin to be more and more aware of a beautiful feeling, the feeling of presence. Everybody wants to feel peace of mind. I did a study of 600 business executives and said, what do you most want in your life? Not in work, but in your life. Peace of mind was the number one answer. Everybody's one step beyond our precious thought system. There's peace. Our senses come alive and there's enjoyment. We begin to feel the connection to life. There's love. So I said to my daughter, I want you to understand, in a quiet mind, you'll find quiet and a nice feeling. And I said, the third thing I want you to know is that when you're in a quiet mind, you'll have, and a nice feeling, you'll have all the common sense you need to deal with any single problem that comes your way for the rest of your life. And then I started to realize I want that for every one of my clients. Then I started to realize I want that for everybody in the world. So I'm part of the three principle global community. We're helping this spread out through the world and helping everyone have an opportunity to be reminded that you already have what you're looking for because you're intimately connected to the divine, to your spiritual nature, to the energy of life itself. So I'm just reminding each of you what you already know on a deeper level. So Jen and Dave, I wish you'd given me some warning so I had time to prepare for this talk. I don't know. I just had to bumble my way through this.
You must have had a good book open. No, mate. Dicken, as usual, beautiful, mate. Thank you so much.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you so, so much. And for those people who weren't here right at the beginning, we got the dates wrong.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you so much for dropping your breakfast and coming and doing this.
Yeah.
You've now got a space free on Monday.
I do. Yeah.
Bless you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you so, so much. We really appreciate, like Jen said right at the beginning, we appreciate all the love you show us, and we appreciate all the love you show the world.
And our families.
Yeah, all of us.
No, thank you.
People on this stream.
My pleasure. Well, thanks for having me, everybody. I know it's getting late there, so I'm glad I could come tell you a bedtime story.
There was a few people nodding. I could see it. That's a good thing. Bless you, man.
Everybody.
Love to Coisy, love to the family.
I will. Thank you.
God bless, man. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, mate. Okay, God bless. That was lovely. Thank you, Dicken. Right, tomorrow, 10 a.m. start. And tomorrow evening, we've got a guest speaker called Christine Heath.
And I'm going to double check I've got the right time and date.
Yeah. And so tomorrow, 10 a.m. start, day 2 of the Freedom Thinking for the Love of Life retreat.
It's not
Everyday magic for the unwitting conjurer. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for a beautiful day. Thank you, everybody who's contributed and asked questions. And thank you, everybody, just for showing up. Love to you all.
Well, thanks very much, Dave and Jen. Cheers.
Thanks, lad. Bless you, bud. Loads of love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you, lovely. Yes. Thanks, Julie, love.
Thank you. Bye.
Hey, Kate, you're supposed to paint the drawers.
Thank you. It was lovely. Thank you.
Thanks, Ali, love. Thank you. We're going to stop recording. I do have to say, I love Tess.